All right, everybody, welcome back into another episode of the markleskopodcast. Joined once again by Chris Gorki. Joining me again to talk Penn State football. Chris really knows his stuff. We just had a long conversation about some things, and we're coming on here to talk about it. Chris had some topics he wanted to discuss, and again, like, Chris really knows his stuff. He has his opinions on Campbell and what they're doing right now. He's going to talk about that, and I agree with him. So me, him, and Brett just had a conversation about it. So we're going to talk about that. Running back RB1, Linebacker U in Indiana, because I've said before about how we haven't been Linebacker U for a while, and Chris has his theory on it. But yeah, Chris. And check him out on Big Ten Huddle too. He's always on there. He's good at it. He has good shows on there. Those guys have a pretty good channel, and Chris goes on. It's usually one of the more popular episodes when Chris goes on. So, Chris, welcome back in. How you doing?
I'm good. How you guys doing? Well,
good.
How are you saying you guys doing, Brett?
Yeah. Good, man.
It's all good, man. You want me just to jump into it, like topic by topic here, then, or
sure? Yeah, we can start with Campbell if you want.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm on my phone here. If there's people in the chat that are saying stuff, I can't see it because for some reason I don't know how to get the chat up here. Just to give you guys a heads up, if somebody's asking me questions. Oh, all right.
Yeah, no one's commented yet, but I'll pull it up. And if my computer resets, Chris, it shouldn't. But if it does, then just keep talking. I'll come back on.
Yeah, no problem. Usually I could see it. That's why I was saying, just in case, if people had questions or comments that, like, they ask me or just replying to people, and just saying I can't, in case I can't see it.
Yeah, I'll pull them up on the screen. I'll try and keep up. I don't know if I'll be able to, because
no, it's okay. I'm not saying you got to read every comment. I'm just saying, like, here and there, like, if somebody has, that's
yeah. All right, man. So you were talking about Campbell and their portal approach right now. What are your thoughts on it?
All right. So here's the thing. Like, everybody just wants to hear the positive stuff and this and that because positive is nicer. I think Campbell has done a pretty good job thus far. But there are some things I'm a little disappointed about, and I just hope it's not a sign for the future. So, and this might have been repetitive. I might have said this on the last show, but the thing going in was, from what Pat Kraft said and alluded to, and I know it's from a couple personal friends that were connected to BOT members and stuff that, know Pat Kraft is, and you heard it in his audio leak. We were supposed to go big game hunting in the portal and in recruiting. Now that we have some not great NIL, well, pretty darn good NIL. It might not be top 4 like he said, but it's probably top 10. $30 million is a lot of money to play with. And, the head coach, it's up to him, his model. He has a right to do with the money how he sees fit. But we were led to believe that regardless of who the head coach is, that the one understanding was going to be we were going to be more aggressive with NIL in the portal and in recruiting. And I'm talking more aggressive in terms of going after bigger names, like bigger players. And that really, to be honest, that really hasn't happened thus far. Now, I get and I understand the fact that we're replacing half of us. I can't even keep up with the amount of replacements we have and guys leaving, but I know it's probably up to 50, 60 players that we, roster players we're probably replacing. So when it comes to having to replace that many players, yes, you can't go out and just, you can't go out and get 5 or 6 big name guys and then, not have money left for everybody else. You have to bargain shop. You have to spread that money out. The player, and I have no issue with any of the Iowa State players coming in. That's not what this isn't about him bringing in Iowa State players. Well, a lot of those top Iowa State players are actually pretty good, and I think they're going to do very well at Penn State. So and there's familiarity with obviously Campbell and his system. Now, what I'm saying is, like, okay, so some of the players you're bringing in are going to be starters. You're going to need guys that some will be starters. Some of them will be depth pieces, rotational players. And then there's going to be guys that are just bodies for just practice squad guys, because that's what every team has. That's what every team has. And that's fine. That's understandable. But it is a little disappointing that he hasn't went out and targeted some of the bigger name guys that we thought we were going to, we would see. And I'm talking specifically at wide receiver, not just wide receiver, but that's a big one because, he brought in this Chase Sowell, who looks like a pretty good player, Brett Eskildsen from, I don't know if I'm saying the name right, Eskildsen or whatever, from Iowa State, and we got Kobe Howard. After those three guys, who do we have? We don't have anybody with experience. Now, historically, from my understanding, listening to Matt Campbell, and I talked to some Iowa State guys, just like messaging them, and he likes a vertical passing game. That's like Matt Campbell is good with a vertical passing game. So he's bringing in taller receivers, bigger bodied receivers. And I just think that, because he was at Iowa State, and Jaden Higgins is an example. Like, Jaden Higgins was a first-round receiver last year. He's with the Texans a couple of years ago. He played in 2024 with Iowa State, and he was a 1,000-yard receiver. And so was Jalen Knoll. But Jaden Higgins, I don't think, was like this top recruit or top portal guy, and they developed him into one of the better receivers in the country. He became a first-round pick. And I also think because he was at Iowa State, to supplement not being able to recruit top talent, he went after bigger receivers to try to help supplement. In other words, you have two low-level receivers. One guy's 5'11", 6'4", another guy's 6'3". They're athletically around the same. Let's go with the taller guy. I think he's kind of taken that same approach with going after a lot of these receivers because they're all big-body guys. But I just hope he's not being overconfident, thinking that he could just do it at Iowa State, transfer that same philosophy to Penn State while not going after any big-name guys, because every other school is going after big-name players. And again, I get we have to spread the money around, but I still thought we would have been a little more aggressive with bringing in some bigger names, at least a few. You had Quincy Porter, who was kind of close to going to Penn State, but he didn't because of NIL. And we have the money now. Quincy Porter's a big body receiver from New Jersey, went to Ohio State. He didn't play, but he was only a true freshman. And here's the thing. You lock up a Quincy Porter, you could potentially have that kid in another 2-3 years. And you have this big-time wide receiver one. And I doubt he's going to be a bust. You never know. You never know with these guys. Some of the best-looking players could end up being a bust. But I've seen a lot in Quincy Porter where I just find it hard to believe he won't be a very, very good receiver. He might not be this 5-star to everybody, but he's going to be a very good receiver. And they didn't even look at Quincy Porter. Another receiver, Mylan Graham, from another true freshman receiver from Ohio State. They showed a little bit of interest, but that's it. They have no visit set up for Mylan Graham, for Quincy Porter, nothing. Now, on the flip side, you get a new coach. Michigan gets a new coach with Kyle Whittingham. They're bringing in Jamari French, I believe, a true freshman receiver, another 5-star, high 4-star, really good athletic receiver. He's about ready to commit to Michigan. So why is it always Penn State? It's just Penn State and Clemson. We're always we're the only big-time programs that don't go attack big names with NIL. Why is that? So it's a little frustrating. Again, I understand having to replace a lot of guys, and we did bring in some good players, some solid players, but just thought we'd see a little more from everything we heard in the offseason. And it really hasn't been there. It's let's just fast forward to, and I know I'm looking ahead. So let's just say whatever happens this year happens. Chase Sowell leaves. You're going into 2027 with Kobe Howard, this Brett Elskerson, and nobody else that has up to this point any kind of all Penn State has right now. Well, you got Peter Gonzalez, who's coming off injuries, who hasn't played. Lyric Samuel, who looks like a good recruit, who's just a freshman, hasn't played at all, and a bunch of low-level 2026 guys. So you're going to have 2 receivers as it stands right now that you'd be going into the 27 class. And I'm looking ahead. Where's the portal? Where's bringing in young portal guys that could be like top portal receivers where we could not the one spot that really hurt Penn State over the years has been that big time number 1 receiver. And you thought he was going to bring a guy in, and maybe Sowell's a guy, but Sowell's only here 1 year. So that was a little. Now, other than that, he's done a good job. He's done a good job at defensive tackle. We got a lot of big bodies. Bigger doesn't always mean better. Now, bigger is going to mean better as opposed to what we had in this last year in 25, because it was the worst defensive tackle play I've ever seen at Penn State. I've been watching Penn State football since the late 80s, and I'm not being hyperbolic. It was the worst defensive tackle play I've ever seen as a fan of Penn State in the last 30 years or so. It was 25, 30 years. It was horrible. So we're going to be better. And some of these big guys, they look like they're pretty good and could move. And it's just, you just see a pattern with Campbell. Iowa State being out in the Midwest, it's not Big Ten, but it's Big Ten country. They built a roster up for old school, old fashioned Big Ten style football. They couldn't go out and recruit top talent, so they just went out. They got big bodies and played old fashioned. Let's just get big. Let's get physical. And that's nice. But I just hope he realized, I'm sure he does at Penn State, this isn't Iowa State. You got to adapt your philosophy a little bit, and you still have to go out and get top talent. You're not going to go out and get all these 3 stars and just hope you could develop them. And it just falls into place. So that's just a little bit of a concern. Here's an example. Defensive tackle was our biggest need. We lost everybody. And so we needed to bring in 4 or 5 defensive tackles in the portal. And they brought some big boys in, like I said, and there's some good names. One of the top portal D tackles, though, was a guy named Francis Brew from Pitt. Kid lit it up. Kid was a really solid this was a top defensive tackle. Kind of like an Anthony Zettel type style player. Not exactly. I'm just, wouldn't that have been nice to go and get him? And they didn't even look at him. The kid's right there at Pitt. You got a great player right now. Not that it matters if we recruit nationally. I don't know where he's from originally. But if you got a great player at Pitt, a great defensive tackle, and you need defensive tackles, they didn't even go look at this guy. So everything thus far has been bargain shopping. It's all money ball. I get you have to do that a little bit here, replacing so many guys. I just hope the money ball thing isn't a sign for him that this is what he's going to be like every recruiting class, every portal class. You got to spend, man. You have to be willing to go out and get the big names. Now, something I want to transition to, I'm going to skip ahead to the Indiana part because it ties into what I'm saying. Then we'll come back to the RB1 and the LBU. Indiana, what they have done has absolutely polluted people's brains and made them very, very just stupid. Anybody that thinks other teams are just going to copy and paste what Indiana did and what Kursignetti did, and voila, you're good now, is delusional. Okay? Indiana will be the first team, maybe ever, since this blue chip ratio thing came out, which is the percentage of 4- and 5-star guys on your roster being over 50%. Indiana will be the first team to win the national championship. Every other team that has won a national championship has had blue chip ratios over 50%. Which means they're recruiting top talent. They're having top 10, top 15 recruiting class, mainly top 10 recruiting classes. The data is out there. The proof is in the pudding. I understand that it's a different game now with NIL and players transferring. You don't want to get a player and build them up and just have them walk out the door. So retention's important. You might lose some players, but you'll keep the majority of them. You still got to recruit the best you can. Now, like Indiana had only 9. I saw 8. Another person, I saw 9. 8 or 9 total 4 and 5 stars. Anybody, if people think that you are going to build a roster filled with like 95, like 85, 93, like 93 stars on your team, and that's gonna be okay just because Indiana did it. And I know these ranking systems, people think they're a joke, and player for player, yeah, there's gonna be inaccuracies. Like these guys are ranking like over 500 some players across the country. Of course, there's going to be inaccuracies. Like Julian Fleming was probably the most overly ranked guy ever. You're going to have inaccuracies, player for player. But team rankings as a whole, the data is there that, again, it shows that talent wins. Talent wins. If you simply just go out and recruit 3-star guys and then just supplement with older players in the portal that are 3-star guys, why isn't Boston College, NC State, why aren't like schools like that, like a Stanford, why aren't they doing what Indiana did? What Signetti in Indiana did, I consider probably the best coaching job in maybe the history of sports. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but what he did with the level of talent he had to build them up, it's and people think this is now like the blueprint. This isn't the blueprint. It was incredible coaching. Like this, he's probably got the best defensive coordinator in the country in Brian Haynes, who deserves as much credit as anyone, as Signetti himself. What he did was one of the best jobs in the country. They play the most disciplined football. I know football coaches, everything's execution. And that is what Indiana does. You could have a top talent guy that's running around and misses. You could have a top linebacker that misses his gap. Could have a top safety that's out of position. You have a lower level guy that's coached well, that executes the correct way. That's going to be better. That's not easy to do across the board, but that is what Signetti did. They're the most disciplined football team. Probably they execute probably as good as any football team I've ever seen as far as execution. But again, it's delusional to think anybody could just copy and paste what Indiana did, and you no longer have to worry about recruiting top talent. And here's another thing I want to say about Indiana. Okay. What Indiana did when they first got there, playing money ball and bringing these James Madison players over and getting whoever else, it was out of necessity. They didn't have a choice. Like people are acting like they did this, like this is what they just knew what they're doing. It was out of necessity. They were Indiana. When Signetti first got there, Indiana historically has been like, a bottom level Big Ten team. And what I mean by that is, obviously certain powerhouse teams are going to recruit better than lower level teams just based on who they are. Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, Florida, they're going to recruit just who they are. They are going to recruit better than an Indiana or a Boston College or a Washington State. They're going to recruit better because they're a power program. Okay.
Yep.
Indiana wasn't. They did it out of necessity. What Indiana is doing now that Indiana's on the map and people want to go there and they have some NIL themselves, just like Penn State, they're not just moneyballing everything anymore. They're going in the portal now. They're going big game hunting. Nick Marsh is a 4-star receiver, very good, top-level type receiver. They went out and got him going to Indiana. They went out and got one of the top quarterbacks in the country for next year, Josh Hoover. They went out and they got one of the top defensive ends in the country. I forget how to say his name. They went out and got about 4 or 5 big name players in the portal. So to think that they're not taking advantage. Like what they did at first is out of necessity. Now what they're doing is going big game hunting. They're still going to bring in a bunch of 3-stars, sure, but they're also going big game hunting, and they're bringing in 4 or 5 guys. That is what I hoped Penn State would do. That's what I hoped Penn State would do. Is you go out, you supplement what you have to with so many guys on the roster, but you at least still go bring some big name guys in, preferably at receiver. They haven't done it recently, and they really haven't done that, So we'll see.
Well, I'm going to pull up your picture that you sent us the other day. This puts it into perspective what you're talking about. The blue chip ratio. So I don't know if you guys can really read that, but basically the last 19 of 20 national champions have had a 7.5 or better blue chip ratio. National rank 7.8 or better national rank in 4-year recruiting average.
Yep.
Their blue chip ratio is really high. So Indiana, they're doing it without it, but that's like what they're doing is insane. I mean,
it is.
It's literally, it's a miracle. It's history. We're watching history right now.
Yep.
But
what that said was what I texted yesterday. That was from I think it was from 2021 going back the past 10 years or 22. What that was 19 of the 20 last national champions had, if you took your previous 4-year recruiting classes and you took their average of where they were, ninth, they finished 9th this year, 7th this year, 8th this year. What that was your previous 4 recruiting classes averaged 7th or better. And 19 out of the 20 last national champions had an average recruiting class of 7th or better.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not enough data, if that's not enough proof, I don't know what is. You have Indiana who did it once with an incredible coaching job, as opposed to the past 20 years of history showing you the other way around. Historically, what teams do is they recruit the best they possibly could. Some guys are going to be bust. And then you use the portal to supplement with veteran guys. There's people on these message boards that I get into it with a little bit that literally think recruiting rankings mean nothing anymore. They mean nothing. They think you could just be a Texas Tech and you just go out, which, by the way, Texas Tech has a donor that's worth $4 billion. They go out and you could just get veteran players that are just get they think if you get older players that are 3-stars and fill your roster up with older players that are 3-stars, that's better than building a team through recruiting. So in 2023, I'll just give you an example. Not that we had a chance at this guy, but in 2023, Penn State went out and got Dante Cephas, a veteran proven player at receiver. In 2023, Ohio State recruited and landed Carnell Tate. Who would you rather on your team, Carnell Tate or Dante Cephas? Yes, there's going to be older players in general, if they're the same talent level, are going to be better than what a a recruit is. But, talent is talent. You're not, I don't know. I'm telling you, Indiana completely polluted people's brains if they think this is the way to go now. It's insane.
Yeah, they've thrown a wrench in a lot of things. Not only does it make it harder in the Big Ten and nationally because Indiana's now getting recruits, but they're doing it. What they've done is I don't know how they're doing it. It's insane. They just I know how they're doing it, but the fact that it's still working is insane. They execute. So 2010 Auburn, they had what you're talking about, 11 Alabama, 12 Alabama, Florida State, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Bama, Clemson, LSU, Bama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. So they've all had what you said, that blue chip ratio, that top recruiting class. So it's still needed. Now, Indiana could lose the 19th. And then we're okay, well, it fizzled out. I don't think they're going to. I think they're just
right. Well, the thing is, even if they lose, I wouldn't say it fizzled out. It's it still worked. It's still pretty amazing what they've accomplished. But it's just if you think another team is ever going to win a national championship besides Indiana, only having 10 4-star guys on their team, I got 5 bridges to sell you.
Yeah. So Chris, let's go through these comments. I've been starring the ones that I want you to see.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Also, the players are all drinking age. Okay, so I'm going to pull them up on the screen so you can see them. Someone said we need no Rodgers.
Not getting him. He's trending to Auburn. He visited. We put on a good visit. He liked us, but last I checked, last night, he's trending toward. It's not definite, but he's trending towards Auburn.
Okay, edge linebacker depth, red zone wide receiver who can contested catch and a route running wide receiver. So we need a diverse wide receiver group. Yeah, just kind of going off of what you said. We need a stud wide receiver number 1, like a Porter.
Well, let me pull that comment back up. Here's when he's talking about diverse. So Elskasdin is actually the speedster. I don't know what Sowell runs, but he's I'm sure he's like a 4.5 guy at least. Elskasdin is the speedster. But diversity, who's the slot receiver? It would have been Denmark. Think about it. You got Kobe Howard played the X. He's a C6'1", he played the X position, which is the outside. This Elskasdin and Sowell are big-bodied outside guys. So I think what Thomas James is saying is, I don't know if he's talking. We have the big-bodied guys, Thomas. We don't have the little speedsters to play the slot. And as far as going up and getting the ball, Sowell 6'3", Elskasdin is 6'1", 6'2". Ben Bramer, tight end, is 6'7". I mean, what Campbell in Iowa State does very well is go up and get the ball. They throw a lot of back shoulder fades, which you haven't seen a lot at Penn State with Franklin, but they throw a lot of back shoulder fades, a lot of 50-50 balls. I'm not worried about guys being able to go up and get the ball. They got that. I'm just worried about overall talent. And I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, which Tyler Mauser played a lot, which 12 personnel, for people that don't know, is instead of 3 receivers, 1 tight end, is 2 receivers, 2 tight ends. And the reason I say that is because you don't have right now a slot receiver. Now, hypothetically, Kobe Howard could play the slot, even though that wasn't his position last year, because he's pretty quick. He's not fast, but he's quick, a good route runner. You don't need just to be a little guy to be a slot. Hypothetically, he could be a slot, but he's more positioned to be an outside receiver. So I just wanted to comment on our reply to Thomas. That's all.
What are our biggest priorities right now? I mean, you said it, but you can answer it again if you want.
I mean, it was defensive tackle, but they brought a lot of defense. We already signed 4 or 5 defensive tackles. So we addressed defensive tackle. Some of the guys, they're all, except for one guy, they're all big body guys. Few of them look like they could play well. A few of them just look like they're big blobs in the middle, just to be honest. I think receiver's a priority. I think receiver depth is a priority. Even if you don't have a true number 1, if you have if Kobe Howard is a very solid receiver and Elskasdin so well, you just don't have depth behind them. So I would like to see them bring in a few more receivers. But this is what I'm talking about. So they don't even look at going after Quincy Porter, Miley Graham, or where Michigan is interested in Porter and French. But I wake up today and I see that Penn State there's picks in for them to get this guy. I can't remember their names. There's a guy from Grambling. I forget his name. He doesn't even have a player profile. On the recruiting sites, he had on 3, his name comes up, but he has no ranking. 24/7, he doesn't even exist. So you got a guy from Grambling who was a true freshman that had 400 yards receiving. And then there's a guy that was on Ohio State. I don't know if he was a freshman or he was in his second year at Ohio State. His last name was Witten. And all he was this low-level 3-star guy. He was actually recruited as a tight end. Again, big body guys. That's what Campbell likes. he was like 6'3", 205 or something like that. And they're predicted to come to Penn State. So all he does is go out and he gets low-level, big-bodied receivers, but no big-time receivers yet, except for maybe Sowell, who was bringing over. So positions in need, you got defensive tackle they addressed that. Receiver depth, they addressed that. We're bringing in, they got a couple more safeties, not really big-name players, but they addressed safeties. So I don't, it just mainly wide receiver depth and offensive line depth would be my main concern right now.
Okay. Indiana has proven the ratings mean nothing. It's about fit and do your job with discipline and fundamentals.
Yeah. I don't, no problem. Sure, that's going to happen. If Indiana proved the rankings, here's what I say to that. If Indiana proved the rankings mean nothing, why did 19 of the last 20 national championship teams all have a recruiting class of 7th or better? Could you answer that? And I'm not being the smart ass asking you. Again, this is the problem. Everybody's going to go off, oh, Indiana did it, so we could do it. Just copy and paste. No, you're not going to do that. You're not, talent still wins out. Of course, coaching is important. Cignetti did the best coaching job anybody did. But talent is going to still, you need talent. But no, anybody that thinks that rankings don't matter and you could just do what Indiana did, please give me an answer. Why, for whatever that chart was from 2021, 22 below, why were all 19 or so of the last 20 national championship teams all ranked 7th or better in recruiting as an overall roster? Or just top 10. I'll even give you top 10. Why do almost every national championship team rank top 10 in recruiting if the rankings don't matter? Please give me an answer to that.
Yeah. And Chris, did you play football?
No, believe it or not, I was a skinny little run. I'm just a football nerd that studied the shit out of this thing and started scouting a little bit with doing this little scouting school type thing. And I just really delved into it. And then where the rivals guy asked me to do player evaluations for him. So I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say this and preface it by saying you don't have to play the sport to cover football or whatever. I'm saying this as someone who played football, as someone who has, someone who played the sport, and between Chris and I, we have we've been watching Penn State football for 60 years between the two of us. When you have an Indiana right now, Curt Cignetti, the players that they have, the staff that they have, the execution, this is something that happens when you just have a good mesh. This is an elite conglomerate of everything right now. This is not, I don't know if this will ever happen again. It's just all coming together. It's a great coaching. It's great execution. Next year, they're going to have different coaches. They're going to have different players. One thing about Curt Cignetti getting all this money this year is next year, all of his assistants could be gone and they could be DCs, OCs, head coaches. He could lose his whole staff. He's going to lose players. A lot of them are older. We got to see how he's going to do when there's a lot of controversy involved. Let's say they win it all next year. That doesn't mean they're ever going to win it again. LSU 2019, Ed Orgeron. That team was insane. Probably the best team ever. And they never repeated. He got fired. So we're got to see how it plays going forward. But this is a perfect mesh of execution because Cignetti's a great coach and they're executing well. So we could literally never see this again. And
what I'm saying is, when I say it won't happen, I'm talking about another team outside of Indiana. Why hasn't it happened before? Why? It just, if everybody could just coach and just bring in, of course, fit is important. Yes, fit's important. I mean, that doesn't mean because the guy, if you're recruiting top talent and you could understand their fit, you have visits with these kids, you learn what they're about, you bring them in. Ones that don't work out, they go out the door. I mean, you could still have fit with top talent. It's just, I don't know.
Thomas would like another would like a true fullback.
Yeah, I'd love
Yeah, me
old school
too.
style football.
Yeah,
I don't know if Iowa State does that, but it would be and I think you see people. You're always going to have a spread offense today, but I think you're starting to see some teams kind of go back to a little old style approach. Like nobody will use a true fullback anymore, but they'll just take a tight end and use it as an H-back.
Mm-hmm.
Just use him as a fullback. And I'm sure Rapp could do it. Rapp was a pretty good blocker. He's obviously got the size. Deakins was a great blocker for a tight end. So, but it just depends how they use them. Because a lot of times you would see the tight ends would be blocking as an H-back at the end of the line of scrimmage, and they might bring him in motion. But when the majority of your runs are between the tackles, I would rather see that lead blocker, whether it's a true fullback or an H-back that's a tight end, behind the quarterback, picking off that first guy through the hole. That was one of the things that made Penn State's running game under Paterno all those years so great. It was just that fullback. I watched that fullback just whoever that first guy was coming through the hole, that fullback would take care of him, and that would spring the running back for another. It would spring the running back, but teams don't do a lot of it anymore.
Brandon Snow, Matt Hahn, was it Sean Lawler? I forget his name. Sean Lawler.
I know who you're thinking of. Yeah, there was a Sean Lawler.
They always had tight ends. That's just kind of been taken from the game. I don't know exactly why. I mean, I kind of get it, but it's like
spread offense.
Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers. They had Dan Kreider. I mean, they had some legit Fua Tuamoa or whatever his name was. That number 45 the Steelers had. That was and like is it Juszczyk, the fullback for the Niners?
Yeah,
like he makes
perfect example.
I mean, he's good, but like he makes the Pro Bowl every year because he's like the only fullback in the NFL. So
no, he is good. I love old school style play.
Yeah, it's so infuriating seeing Indiana build a super team with 7.7 4-star recruits. Yeah, of course, Franklin was just. Virginia Tech.
Yeah, well, that's the resources thing. Listen, there's guys on the message board. I'm not gonna name names. There's guys on the message board that would, certain people that would run these boards that would just cover for Franklin, and they would use I argued with guys for years about these resources. Resources isn't what lost them the game, and it was ridiculous because every big game they would lose. You would have these guys. Oh, they lost because he doesn't get the investment for resources. Listen. Having some state-of-the-art pool table and some fancy couch in your players' dorm, is it going to make a difference with your coaching? The whole idea of having better resources means you land more. I'm not talking about NIL, just better resources for like facilities would bring more top recruits in. And as close as I follow recruiting, I've seen one person. There's one recruit, Nick Cross, a good safety, that didn't come to Penn State because of the resources. Like the dorm situation at Penn State was horrible. Like not horrible, but he wanted his own bed. He didn't want to be roomed up with someone.
Yeah. Who was it?
Nick Cross. He was a safety from Maryland, from DeMatha. He was a good player. I don't know if he's still in the NFL. I know he went to Minnesota originally.
That's who Franklin was talking about?
I don't know. Well, he could have been if he brought up that situation specifically. I'm just saying, for years I've heard people use the excuse every time Franklin loses a big game that resources, it was full of shit. I have a dad. This is a funny story.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it was just here's the thing. When I could name probably rattle off 10 players they had lost because of NIL. I could probably rattle off 10 names in the past 3-4 years they lost because of NIL. So you would hear if they lose guys because of like lack of resources in facilities, you'd probably hear it. I've heard one. In Franklin's tenure at Penn State, there was one. And I know, just a funny story, and I know times are different, right? Obviously, way different. My dad's like 82 years old, and he had a friend he played basketball with that went to Penn State on a basketball scholarship named Ronnie Avillion. And when, well, we come from this small town up in northeastern PA near Wilkes-Barre, and outside of Wilkes-Barre. And when this Ronnie Villian first went to Penn State, my dad would go visit him. And there was this big ass snowstorm that happened at Penn State when my dad had to go pick up Ronnie Villian from basketball practice at Rec Hall. And Paterno, because the snow was so bad, I guess wherever they're trying to practice, they had to go through. They had a big game the next day. It was a Friday night. They had to go through their walkthroughs and they had to prepare for this game. And they wanted to do it inside. So Paterno and the basketball coach were on the side talking. And Paterno's like, I don't mean to cut your practice short, but I could really need to use blah, 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 use your facilities. They left. Penn State went on to kick the living crap out of the team. And I forget who my dad said it was, but it was a big game. So when I told my dad about this resource, he goes, so I don't want to hear about facilities. They're in there and it's a snowstorm. They're in there practicing in Rec Hall. And they had no preparing and kicking the crap out of the team. But anyways.
Yeah, 100%. So someone said, I can't find it. Someone said about, hold on, I'm trying to find it.
Let me respond to this comment where there's more 3-stars. There's more 3-stars because on NFL rosters, because there's more 3-stars in like the top 500 recruiting rankings. It's a numbers game. It's not like it's an even thing of there's 200 4-stars and 200 3-stars. No, I don't know how many 4. You might have 100 between the 4 and 5 stars. Maybe that gives you, a top 60, 70, maybe 100 tops, something like that. But then you're going to have 400 other guys that are 3-stars. So yes, of course there's going to be, because there's at least triple the amount of 3-stars in recruiting in general as there are 4 and 5 stars. That's why.
Yeah. Top talent or people that have been designated top talent. That's one thing that I would say. Some of these guys, they're 5-stars, but
there's always going to be busts. Look, Justin Shorter, Ricky Slade. There's always, I get what people say, the argument that they make. There's always going to be busts. There's always going to be, if you go player by player, they're ranking like 500 guys. So of course they're not going to get them all right. There's always going to be some busts. But the individual rankings make up the team rankings. The team rankings as a whole, again, there's data, there's proof that points that the more talented teams are the ones that are winning the big time games. Now, there's teams like prior to Sarkisian getting to Texas, there's teams that still recruited well that couldn't figure it out. Like Florida's been in a slump, usually recruits pretty well. Texas, there's teams that have in Auburn recruit well, but can't, still had trouble getting over the hump. But the majority, it's still the top talented teams are still the ones winning the national championship. They're still the ones winning, going the furthest. So, of course, you're ranking 500 guys. Of course, there's going to be busts. In the NFL, the Cleveland Browns have 1 million busts every time they draft a quarterback. Professional scouts have, but there's busts in the first round of the NFL draft. Does that mean that, does that mean that 5th and 6th round players in the draft pan out more than first round players?
Yeah. What was Indiana's plan if the QB got hurt? I don't know.
Their backup was Mendoza. Mendoza's brother.
Yeah. So I'll say this. Monday when they play the national title, I said it last night. Let's say Mendoza, the first one, snaps his leg. All right. Knock on wood, doesn't happen. But let's say that happens. I think they still win because they're just so good. Their execution is just so good. So, but
his brother Marco Mendoza was the backup. I don't know how good he is, but he was the backup.
All right, Chris, do you want to move on to running back 1, RB1?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so Cam Wallace is back. We did not know that before today. So Cam Wallace is back, and it's loaded now. So Chris wanted to bring up this point before Wallace came back. So now that he is back, We got a lot of guys.
Well, no, I just think this is a fun conversation because, like, they do running back by committee. Last year, Iowa State, they ran Carson Hansen and they ran Abu Sama. Sama went to Wisconsin. We got Hansen. Hansen's probably the better of the two. So, you got right. I think you never want to say it's definite because you're always going to hear there's an open competition. But coming from Iowa State, Hansen's a really good running back. He's a veteran. You know what you're getting. And he's a good, solid back. So I would think he's probably going to be one of your top backs. So after Hansen, you now have back. Yeah, go ahead. You now have Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin, James Peoples, and Tiki Hayes. They're not all going to play and get a lot of carries. So me, Mark, and Brett, I just brought up was who was going to be the number 2 back. If Hansen's number 1 or 1A, one of the top backs, and you're going to have 2 backs kind of like they did with Sama and Hansen, and we did with Katron and Nick, well, until a smarter coach decided Katron should run more. Who's going to be that number 2 back that gets the other, all the other carries with Hansen? Is it going to be Martin? Is it going to be Peoples? Is it going to be Wallace? Who's it going to be? So just an interesting conversation. You guys in the chat, you could put who do you think besides Hansen between Wallace, Martin, Peoples, Tiki Hayes, who will lead who between the 4 of them, who will get the most carries? Who will be that RB2 guy behind Hansen? That's all I really have to say. To me personally, I think they're all very close. They might have like some different styles and bring different things to the table. But Wallace is explosive. He's compact and he's explosive. Like I remember watching Wallace's tape. He looked like a little KJ Hamler out there. So Wallace might be the most explosive of the bunch. James Peoples kind of gives you a little bit of everything. Good moves. He could, decent. Not a huge burner, but he probably is like a mid 4.4, 4.5 guy. Tiki Hayes, I haven't seen enough of. And I think Martin is just similar to Peoples. I think a little bit of everything. I would lean Martin, to be honest with you, because Martin's got nice moves. Martin, I like running backs that are elusive and can hit the home run. And I think Martin could probably do that. Cam Wallace could do that too.
Yeah.
Cam Wallace isn't as shifty. He's more like, one cut, boom, go. But he's explosive.
Yeah, the thing for me about it is I like Quentin Martin, but we don't really know what he's going to do because he hasn't really played a lot because our previous coach is the previous coach combined with the fact that he hasn't really been healthy this year and stuff like that. We don't know what he's going to do, but I think he can be very good. But yeah, we have Peoples, we have Martin, we have Hansen, and then we have Cam now. So yeah, we could literally have a 4-head backfield. Literally, we could have 4 guys, 4 bodies that we can run. So yeah, we'll see. I like Peoples. One thing that stands out to me with Peoples, comparing him to Nick Singleton, for example, he seems to have vision. And
he does. He has very good vision.
He can move pretty good. So that's one thing that I like about it is he seems to be able to move pretty good. He seems to have vision. He has hops. Singleton didn't really have hops. He was just north and south quick. Did not have vision. So it would have helped that he had better coaching. But yeah, so we'll see. Hansen is 6'2", 200 or something? 6'2", 220 or something like that?
He's a little over 2. No, he's probably around 220, I think. He's a big boy. But he can move. He's pretty, he's not a blazer, but he's probably like a 4.5 guy, I'd imagine.
Yeah, yeah. When Drink was in the running for the head coaching job, their running back, I can't remember his name, but I was watching his
Ahmad Hardy.
Oh my, yeah, I was like, oh my god,
he's good, man. He's really good. I remember watching the game. I don't know if it was against A&M where he was playing. He bounced him to the outside, and he was explosive. And I don't, some guys are saying he's only like a mid 4.5 guy, but man, he was pretty damn explosive for a bigger back. He's really good. And you know what's funny is Missouri had Keywan Lacey the year before, so they lost Keywan Lacey, and then and this Ahmad Hardy was some low level guy they got from some smaller school, and just they replaced him.
Yeah, the running back room is interesting, and we just don't really know exactly how it's going to play out. But it is very interesting because, again, we have bodies now, so it's just one of those things where, who's it going to be? I agree with you. I think it's going to be Hansen is going to be the running back one. I'm just playing some of his highlights here, but yeah, he can move, man. Highlights. Dude, like Brandon Jacobs, for example, he was a 6'4" running back. That's insane. And he was good. He was pretty quick. He was more of a bruiser, but he was pretty quick. But Hansen, dude, he can move. Holy shit! Like he's 6'2", man.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, when you're taller as a running back, it makes it a little harder to me. But he can move. Like, man.
The taller you are, you can't cut as easy because of inertia. Yeah. The taller you are when you're planting and trying to cut, you're more top heavy, so it's not as easy to cut.
He's quick.
Yeah, he's
got vision.
That's what I'm saying. They all got pretty good vision. I think he's going to be, like I said, I think he'll probably be one of your top running backs. Now, are they gonna play mainly just two running backs like they did last year, or are they going to play three running? I'm just saying, who's going to get the bulk of the carries? Is it going to be split up where Hansen gets 12 and then another guy gets 11 a game, 13 a game, 11? Or is it going to be like 8, and 8, where they play three guys, something like that?
Yeah, I do think, honestly, that and again, it's a new coach, new method, new approach, but I think they're going to do the opposite of what Franklin did. Franklin was just playing guys because of stupid, idiotic reasons. So I think they're going to play everybody. Like whoever can execute the plays in a game, they can use fresh legs like the whole game. Really, like I think
they could.
Do it, so.
But running backs like to get in a rhythm. It's not like rotating defensive linemen. Like when you say play everybody, that would be like 5 running backs. So you have Hansen, Martin, Wallace, Peoples, and Tiki Hayes. Tiki Hayes is going to end up being as good as any of them. Supposedly he looked great as a freshman in practice. So I don't think you're going to see 4 or 5 guys getting, just a few carries a game. That's what I'm saying. It'll be 2, maybe 3 guys. So it'll be interesting to see who. Now you're seeing him running. You should put James Peoples' highlights up real quick and compare the two.
But yeah, Chris, we'll get a segment here at some point of you. You like to do player evaluation, so you can definitely do that. And you're good at it. I mean, that's what you do. So
yeah, like you get the all-22 tape now too.
Yeah, Aaron has. So we're going to be doing a recruiting segment. It's going to be at least Joe Quirch. His dad, Carlos, played for Penn State. He played for Joe. Aaron Zimmerman, and then we can throw you in there too if you want to do it.
Sure.
But yeah, we're going to do a recruiting segment. Like that's not, that's not my thing. Like I follow recruiting, but I'm not it. Like Brett is like, Brett. That's Brett's thing. Like, and just your thing, and one thing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say with Nick Singleton, it's still funny because like when he, and I know I said this story, but and this is where people just love all the positive stuff, and they don't like, I'm always the asshole that brings up the tough questions and asks the tough stuff. But like when we got Nick Singleton, we almost lost him to Notre Dame. He was this close to going to Notre Dame. And everybody was jumping through the fucking roof that we got Nick Singleton. And I'm watching this guy's tape. And I'm this infamous guy that said, I use the word jump cut. So people still like, bust my balls about jump cut. I said, I'm watching Nick Singleton's high school tape, and I've seen a lot of running backs. And everything was this like they ran these like quarterback, halfback dive plays at the quarterback where he would do this deep pitch out, and Nick Singleton's just out running everybody around the edge. And then if he's running up the middle, it's just lower your head and get what you could get. And I'm like, where's this guy's moves? Where's this? I said, he's not making anybody miss. I said, this is just a foot race where he's making people miss, where he's not making anybody miss. He's just outrunning guys. I said, he doesn't have a jump cut. And meaning he just doesn't have moves, and he doesn't have jukes. Like in the old days, you called it a juke. He didn't have any jukes. And then I realized he also doesn't have any vision. You don't have to be super jukey. You just vision and just basic cuts. And I brought this up his true freshman year. Well, actually, when we first signed him, and people jumped down my throat about it. Now people are saying like, "Wow, geez, how'd you know that?" Well, set of eyeballs,
Yeah, well, just like now you're saying about Campbell, like I said on the phone, 6 months from now we could be like Chris been saying this for 6 months now that they're not getting the people that they should be getting. So we'll see. But
I hope I'm wrong about him, but and I'm sure he's a good X's and O's coach. So the thing is, like I said, we'll see what he does with the 27 recruiting class. If he takes the same approach to the 27 recruiting class, where he bargain shops, then you're gonna know that's what his MO is.
Yeah, we're gonna be. Now, I think even if Franklin goes out and gets like every 5-star on the board, I think we'll still do better. Like we're gonna have more success long term.
Franklin ain't getting any 5 stars at Virginia Tech.
He's not getting anybody at Virginia Tech. Like the reason he was hired is because he can supposedly get all this talent, and they're gonna, but he's not. Like he's not getting really. He's getting like some of our.
The best talent he's going to have is the guys he's bringing over that he stole from the 26 class. That's going to be his best talent. Could the guy recruit? Could he recruit? Well, yeah, he's a good recruiter, but he's too. In his press conference introductory, he said the same thing. He's still not going to go big with NIL. Supposedly Virginia Tech has decent NIL, and they gave him some money to work with. He said, "I'm not going to lead with money. I still think you could win the old-fashioned way." Which is code for I'm not going to pay players. It's that simple. He'll sell, being in Virginia and having the recruiting connections he has, he'll land a stud, like, a top level guy here or there once in a while. But it's Virginia Tech, it's not Penn State. And with NIL, all the top Virginia guys are probably, most of them are going to be looking for a bag. And he's unwilling to give it to them.
Yeah, he's not paying anybody. Like, I don't know what these Virginia Tech fans think. They're like, yeah, he's going to do so good here. Like, there was this post last night. They said, our head coach was in this round last year, and then we got him. We're so lucky. It's like, man, you guys are clueless. Oh, my God. But, Chris, we can move on to Linebacker U, your theory, because we have not been Linebacker U for
So, I was just like, when you brought it up, I'm thinking of the old days, like, and again, most of my football days come from the 90s and 2000, like remember an old school Joe Paterno teams. And I think the reason why you don't see it as much is because back in the old days, like when I say old days, I'm just talking 90s. That's not old days to me. But Paterno played a standard 4-3. Today, it's a 4-2 with the hybrid guy. So with the 4-2, you just have 2 box linebackers, and then you have that hybrid guy that's usually whatever on the fringe. He's not in the box usually. He's on the fringe of the box. When you had a 4-3, that's more – you had 3 guys right behind the line of scrimmage or 1 guy near the end of the line of scrimmage. You had – it was 3 guys to cover – so you covered less ground. Like in a 4-2 – the reason you have to get such athletic linebackers today and speedy guys like a Rojas, because they have to cover more ground. And when you played a 4-3, when they didn't have these spread offenses and things were bunched up more and a lot of runs between the tackles, there's times I'd look at Penn State line, it'd be 1, 2, 3, right behind the defensive line, 1, 2, 3, middle linebacker, the 2 outside guys right there.
Yeah.
3 guys could cover gaps more than 2 guys could. And when you're just jamming the ball in between the tackles, you could get away with being a less athletic linebacker back then and just being a good instinctual football player. And the best examples of that are like Paul Posluszny, Sean Lee, Dan Connor. Like Posluszny and Lee weren't super athletic, but they just did such a great job at reading and reacting. Like Puz would, yes, like when you think of linebacker, I think more of Posluszny than I do like LeVar Arrington, even though LeVar was great. Posluszny, you read it, you shoot the gap. Boom. You read it, you shoot the gap. He was like when we talk about execution with Indiana, that's what they did. But I think having 3-box linebackers, less of a spread offense, and less ground to cover, I think it made it easier to be a very good linebacker. You didn't have to be as athletic. You didn't have to run. They didn't have to run sideline to sideline as much. It was just between the tackles, you shoot your gap. Obviously, there's some outside run plays, and you have to chase guys down. But there's a lot of games I would watch, not just with Penn State, but in general. And, there's defensive coaches out there that think that, like, every gap should be accounted for. But there's times I would watch, like, Kobe King. The other linebacker would be, say, off to, like, one side a little bit, and there would be a run coming right at Kobe King. And I would see the running back would have 2 gaps he could pick through. And I would sit there watching, like, and I'm just using Kobe King as an example. It's a lot. I'd watch Kobe King, and I'm like, he has 2 gaps. Where's the other, and the other linebacker wasn't out of position. He just might have had a gap that was a little further down the line. Maybe the safety didn't come up in time. Maybe the safety was playing deep. And I'm just watching, like, a guy like a Kobe King having to cover 2 gaps. Back in the old days, it wasn't as hard because you had 3 linebackers to cover all those gaps, and you just run fit and you shot your gaps. You had good instincts. It was read and react. It was easier to be a good linebacker because you had less ground to cover. You didn't have to be as athletic, and you had more help. You had more help. You had another linebacker right there with you. Like it's. Imagine 2 Kobe Kings with a Tony Rojas or a Curtis Jacob. Imagine 3 Kobe Kings right behind the line of scrimmage. Teams are going to have a hard time running the ball, as opposed to 1 Kobe King, a little speedy guy flying around out of position half the time, and, a hybrid guy. But that's the only point I wanted to make when you brought up Linebacker U. I'm sitting there thinking like some of the older guys of like what made it Linebacker U. The difference was it was just execution and less ground to cover.
Well, Mike Motti, he had instincts. That's what and Mike Motti wasn't like this overly athletic guy. Like he was athletic, but he wasn't like
right.
Navarro Bowman.
He had good instincts. And the guy just mentioned Shane Conlon, and Shane Conlon is Linebacker U. Absolutely. I don't know. It was the last comment. I don't know the gentleman that put it up. And I remember Shane Conlon a little bit. Now that's like I said, I was young then. Late 80s is kind of like where I remember. Shane Conlon was from what I remember, and the gentleman that put it up he could comment better than I could on Conlon. He was in the similar build of a Posluszny. He wasn't super athletic, but he just did his. He was fundamentally sound. He had gap integrity, and what Shane Conlon did a great job. He was great in coverage. I mean, Shane Conlon, they dropped him in coverage in the '87 national championship, and the guy had a couple interceptions in that intercept. He picked up Testaverde. Trey Bauer was another good one. They had a lot of good, but like the thing I'm trying to say, those guys weren't like freakish athletes. They weren't these freakish athletes. Yeah, right. They're similar, right? But back then, those guys weren't freakish. I'm not saying they're bad athletes, but did they have to cover as much ground sideline to sideline? They were just so fundamentally sound at shooting the gap and just reading and reacting.
Yeah.
But that's the point I wanted to bring up, and I think it's
yes, he is.
Joe, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that comment. Joe, I have a question for you. On 24/7, there was a guy by the name of Joe K. And the guy asked me, he said, "Are you the Chris on Mark Lesko's podcast?" And I said, "Yeah, sometimes." Are you the same Joe K as, are you Joe K on 24/7? If you don't want to answer or whatever, that's okay. I was just curious if you're the same guy. But
yeah, Chris is on the message boards, which is good. You know, Chris is in there. He reads everything. He comments. Dude, dude, they're so toxic in there. Like, you're a guy who knows what they're talking about. You have a bunch of freaking idiots in there just talking crap, it seems. You know, but it's also a great place to get information. Absolutely.
People don't want to hear the negative stuff on the message boards. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a Joe K. The guy had a name. It went by Joe_K. And I was just wondering, but okay, I know who you are now. But it was a different Joe, I guess.
I wonder who.
I don't know who it was, but somebody's there. It was a joke. The last name was K. I showed you the screenshot of the guy that sent it. But you know, like, see, a lot of things, those message boards. Like, I'm a guy that could drive somebody crazy because I'm not a sunshine pumper. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker. I'm gonna call it like I see it. And people just like positivity. Everybody wants positive because it sounds better. And listen, if something's positive, I'll be the first one to say how great it is. You know, I have no problem. I think Rocco Beck is a really good-looking quarterback. That could be a better version of Trace McSorley. I think Chase Sowell is a good-looking receiver. That could be possibly our number one. I think Kobe Howard could be a big-time receiver. I have no problem, but at the same time, when there's like negative things that aren't like going as well as I think they should be, are what we're told they're going to be, I'm going to call it out. And people don't like hearing about it. You know, people don't like hearing the negative. Like Nick Singleton, when I said the guy in high school, I said he could still be a great back. I said he could still be a hell of a player. He's very explosive. He's big. I said, but not being elusive and having moves to make a guy miss is going to hurt him. People jump. Oh my God, did people jump all over me for that? That Dylan Dawson said, "Who the hell's this jackass?" Well, here I am right now.
Did he really? The PSU Dylan?
Yeah, Dylan's a good dude. I have no issues. I actually support Dylan. I go on his Instagram. Yeah. I send him a message. I support him. I think Dylan's a really good dude. I know he's building a brand. I wish him nothing but the best. But I do remember that. I remember him saying, like, "Who the hell is this guy?" or something like this jackass. I just call it like I see it. You know, like recruiting profiles. There's strengths and there's strengths and there's areas of concern. Everyone has them.
Yeah, and like my approach right now, like I was always the guy between my previous co-host and Brett. Like, you know, I was totally team Franklin sucks for years. So I was the negative guy. And right now, just Campbell's new. So I'm like, it's not that I'm trying to be positive. I'm just like, let's see how it plays out. Yeah. I am not a positive person. I'm optimistic, but like I'm real. I'm like you, Chris. Like I'm gonna call it how it is. If they need to be paying guys, then they need to be paying guys. Like that's it. You know, like we'll see how it plays out. But thank you for the membership, Dennis. Evan, what's up, man? Who else? Someone said about my haircut. Thank you for saying that about my haircut. Who was it? Oh, Gregory. Oh, wait, was it Gregory? Yeah, he said, Mark, that is a Studley Ranger haircut. Thanks, Greg. So
the comedy made before that is like, I'm not sure we have a norm anymore. Now I get things are different now, but you know, I still think that, you know, you're still going to see the LSUs, the Bamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States. They're still going out and trying to recruit the best they can. You know,
Chris, the one day they were in the message boards talking about me, I guess, and Chris was like, "Hey, they think that Bob Chesney's like a lock because of your episode, your thumbnail." And I was like, I told Chris, I'm like, dude, I don't give a flying crap what they're saying, but Chris wanted me to change the thumbnail because it's looked like, so I did. Like I changed it for Chris. I didn't change it for them. I don't care what they're saying, but I changed it for Chris because, you know, Chris explained it to me. Like the other night, Chris, Brett met Steve Jones, and he said he's watched our show.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
Steve Jones is not. I mean, Steve Jones was Joe's right hand man for years. He was like
Yep.
one of the announcers.
Yep.
Yep.
Him and
No,
Fran Fisher is who he preceded.
Yep.
Fran Fisher, man, like
I'm telling you, the kitchen. I'm so Jared, the kitchen guy, right? Sounds just like him. You should invite Steve Jones on, and you could, they could imitate it. He sounds just like Steve Jones. So I hope Jared's doing well. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Jared's a good dude. Yeah, he's doing well. He's like, dude, he was like falling all through his kitchen on this episode the other night after that Ravens game. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Man, that was crazy.
Yeah. That was the end of my gambling. I'm done. That crushed me. I'm fucking living on ramen soup after that.
So, one thing about Steve Jones, I always listen to his radio show, but he's on 7 Mountain Sports. I think that's his main podcast, and he always has good content. Steve Jones, man, he's done a ton of work his whole career. I mean, he's a legend. Like to me, he's not just a good broadcaster for around here. He's one of the best broadcasters of all time in the history of, you put him up there.
I don't know what else he's done. Has he done other things besides cover Penn State?
So he did his radio show. He has a podcast. He's obviously a broadcaster. He was a writer. I believe he was a writer. So yeah, I worked at WPSU for a very short time, and I was right across from him in that office. Like he was literally, I could reach out and touch his desk. So I think he pretty much does everything, but he always gives you a different perspective in a good way. So, but one thing about him and Corey Gagger always went at it, because Corey Gagger, who to me is another legend, he's different.
Yeah, people seem like not to like that Corey Geiger's. Nobody likes anybody that is brutally honest. They don't. It's the same thing with was it Dave Jones? There's a Dave Jones too they don't like, but whatever. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like, dude, you want to talk about honesty or whatever, dude. This show, we don't hold back. I mean, we are not other podcasts. That's the thing. Like, even Landon, who also said that he likes our content, which I'm like, wow, like you actually know about it. But Landon is like PG compared to me. Landon's PG compared to this podcast. You know what I mean? Like, we don't hold back. Now we try to keep it professional, and we try not to swear too much, but we don't hold back, man. Like we just say it how it is. And Brett said that to Steve Jones, and Steve Jones, like, that's how a podcast should be. You shouldn't hold back. It's a podcast.
Yeah.
But Chris, we're going to work on, we'll get you on the recruiting segment, and then you can do the player evaluation on the recruiting segment too. So we're going to get you involved in that. Instagram, do you use it enough that we can message you on there, or no? Okay.
Oh, you can. I don't. You can message me, sure. I mean, I don't like put stuff on there, but yeah, if you want to message me, you can.
I'll just make a group text with you, Joe, and Brett.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll get that going. But did you have anything else, Chris?
Nah, just figure we'd come on tonight, cover some stuff, talk, just what's going on, update some people, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Chris knows who that is.
Who's that?
There's a show that will not be named, but they were Glazers for the previous coach. Yeah, I know who it is.
Well, I mean, I don't want to. I tried to make amends with one guy, and I did, but it's just like there's absolutely some Glazers out there that
it's 3 letters
covered for one coach. No matter what the guy did, he covered for him. Now it's, thank God, he's whatever.
Yeah, Gagger's something else, man. He's a personality, I'll say that. But 3 letters. That's the clue as to who I think Coach Soup is talking about.
Yeah.
And Chris never said a word. So, all right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you for coming on. Yeah, Corey is someone I listen to a ton. Joe Pa, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. I appreciate it. But
Joe's a good dude.
Oh yeah, Joe Pa, Joseph Vincent Quirch. he's named after Joe because his father, Carlos, played for Joe.
Yeah,
so we got
cool.
Joe Pa, and Joseph Vincent is literally named after Joe Pa. So, but all right, guys, I want to have his dad on, but I know at one point Joe was telling me, he's like, yeah, he said if he comes on, like he doesn't want to say anything that he'll regret. That was all stuff when Franklin was, all that stuff was like, oh my God, dude. I'm like, I get it.
But I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. Like I it's funny because like on these message boards, like I don't go by the name Chris or Gorki or whatever. I just, I pick up a handle. I'm a mob guy. I like mob history. I always have. So I'll put the name like Tony Bender or Tony Ducks. And when I say something somebody doesn't like, they'll say, oh, okay, whatever, Gorki. And they think if they say my name, they're like putting me on the spot. I said, but I don't give a fuck. I don't like, yes, I said, you think you say my name as like, you think I give a shit? People know who I am. I don't care what these people think, especially when they show their hand of how stupid some of them are.
Oh, dude, there's like, too many dumb people that comment on our stuff. Like, not on YouTube, like Instagram, TikTok. Like, holy crap, dude. I'm like, how are you? Your brain doesn't work. Seriously.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
But, yeah, Chris, now that you say that, on Netflix, that one show that they just brought out, the Mob Wars, Joey Merlino there in Philly. Dude, Joey Merlino, like, he seems like he seems like a good dude. Like mobsters, you think like, oh, they're this, they're that, but he seems like a good dude. I mean, like, I don't know. Do you know? We probably shouldn't get into it, but
I met Joey. I know Joey. I don't know him well, and I shouldn't say I know him. I met him. I seen him. Yeah, I gotta be careful not because I'm worried about anything. Listen, so what? Like one of my closest friends is he has like the best mob podcast out there. Anybody, I know we're switching gears. I'm not gonna go on. Anybody that's interested in mob history, go. There's a guy, Mob Talk Radio Show with Jeff Canarsie. I've been good friends with this guy for several years. He's a good dude. He comes from, had a family that was in the mob. I can't say what family. And he covers a lot of history. And he was really close with Merlino. Not really close, but he was close with some of these top Philly guys. And I met him a couple times down in South Philly, some social clubs that were off limits to outsiders. And unfortunately, he had a big falling out with Merlino. But Joe, Joey's cool as far as with the the sports and the content. But between what went down with him and a close friend of mine, I just like I just can't really say anything. I can't say anything. But
I'm trying to remember the one guy's name. He's on the Coach JB show. Hold on. Do you know Coach JB from Last Chance?
Yeah.
Show? It's really
actually, for the people that like mob history and saw The Irishman on Netflix from years ago about the real life movie about who killed Jimmy Hoffa with De Niro and Joe Pesci. So the mob boss, Russell Buffalino, that Joe Pesci played, he was my neighbor. He lived right. I could walk to his house from here for over 30 years.
I'm trying to find, because I want to give him a shout out, man. He does.
I know the JB guy, the guy, Last Chance U. I forget who. I don't know who I know the JB guy.
This guy has a mob show as well. He's interviewed like Sammy the Bull and stuff like that. I'm trying to remember his freaking name, dude.
There's a lot. Sammy the Bull is the biggest lying rat out there. Like, do you know like a quick story like about Sammy the Bull? So he ratted out John Gotti. He said John Gotti was.
As long as we're not in any danger, Chris, go ahead.
You're not in any danger. These guys don't do. They don't do that. But like, so Sammy the Bull, when he killed, it was like 18 or 19 people he killed, right? And when he became a rat and he ratted out John Gotti, he tried to say, well, Gotti was setting him up, blah, 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 which wasn't true. And this is how scummy the FBI is and was back then. So one of the murders that Sammy the Bull did was he killed a 16-year-old kid named Alan Kaiser. And it was supposed to be mistaken identity. He tries to say where he got in a fight with some guy early in the night at some bar. So him and his buddies went trying to hunt this guy down and find him. And they saw the guy and were going to shoot him. But this Alan Kaiser kid was friends with the guy and came running at the kid. He killed a 16-year-old kid. The kid was 16 years old. You don't do that. Sammy should have been killed on the spot for that. And when he became the star witness for the defense, the FBI kept that murder. They knew who it was. They didn't tell the prosecution about that murder because it would make Sammy look like even a worse witness. And they kept that. They kept the murder from this Alan Kaiser, this 16-year-old kid. They kept it from his family for several years. The FBI wouldn't tell the family until way after the trial was over. That's how scummy they are. Sammy the Bull thinks he's still in. He thinks he's still in the mob. He's out of his mind. He's crazy. He was selling shirts that said Bull 19 for 19 murders, but then he turns around and says he's a born again Christian.
Well,
and it's funny. There's a guy that does another. He used to do a mob show, and now he does wrestling stuff. Named Lee Cole. And Lee Cole, he's all about clicks and views, and he does a good wrestling show. And he's an older guy, and he knew where Sammy lives in Arizona now, and he knew where Sammy was living, and he went up and pulled up on Sammy, recording him with his phone, saying, "Why don't you talk about Alan Kaiser, Sammy?" And it was Sammy and his son. And they came walking to his car, and his son started beating the crap out of the guy, punching the guy, and all you heard the phone go flying. What the fuck? Well, yeah, I don't know. A lot of rats out there and stool pigeons.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it too much, but
yeah,
John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, that there's several movies about it. But Jeff Nadeau.
Best Gotti movie is from HBO. Gotti, the 1996 HBO Gotti movie with Armand Asante is the best one. But go ahead.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions about this stuff, I could help. I could answer. Go ahead.
But Jeff Nadeau is the guy I wanted to give a shout out to. He's been on Coach JB. He does a mob podcast. Do you know who that is? Jeff Nadeau?
Yeah, listen, him and my buddy hate each other. My buddy, my buddy Jeff Canarsie and him, they hate each other. They hate each, and he's afraid of my buddy Jeff. So this Jeff, he tries to deny it, but supposedly this Jeff Nadeau, I guess he said something that Joey Merlino got mad at him about, allegedly. Okay, and there's a guy a couple guys that dined out Nadeau and said there's a recording of him running into the police, hiding in his car with a gun. Nadeau doesn't like me because I'm friends with a guy he doesn't like, my other buddy Jeff. But Nadeau wouldn't say half the stuff he does if he was in front of our faces. Like he's Nadeau, you don't have the problem with me if he watches this. Your problem's with my buddy, so you should probably keep my name out of your mouth. What did that say?
All right, guys. I don't want to get into it too much.
Hold on. Yeah, great. Yeah, yeah. So there's a movie coming out about Greg Scarpa that Mark Wahlberg's playing in. I forget the name of the movie, but Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, Greg Scarpa, they call him the Grim Reaper. He's probably one of the most feared monsters of all time. And Greg Scarpa was so he had an FBI handler that came, and Greg Scarpa was a rat for like 30 years. And there's an FBI handler that worked for him oversaw him named Len DeVecchio. This Len DeVecchio, it was just like the Whitey Bulger thing, where Whitey Bulger had an FBI handler, Michael Connolly, where he was committing murders that while working for the FBI. And this Len DeVecchio almost went away for a long time about it. But then so I don't know what happened, if there's a technicality, but the case how it got overturned. But yeah, I know. Listen, I've been with this mob stuff for a long time, like as far as the history. And I met some of these guys. I know some of these street guys. Listen, I'm in a book. I told you, Mark, you remember that book I showed you? My name, I'm in a book with my name was put in a book next to John Gotti's name. But it was just my buddy that wrote a book that knows the Gotti family pretty well. That's all.
Yeah, because you were like in the neighborhood or something like that. Yeah.
No, it wasn't a neighborhood. It was just that was in Philadelphia. My buddy Jeff Canarsie wrote a book about his life and the people he knew while doing this show and who he met through this show. And I became good friends with him, and he's close with the Gotti family. He's like Angel Gotti, actually. John Gotti's daughter, Angel Gotti, is on YouTube all the time, actually, and she has a huge following. And just like through being friends with my buddy and knowing him, meeting up with him, he shared a couple stories when I met up with him in Philly, and he put it in the book. That's all.
All right, guys. Linebacker U and the Mafia. That'll be a good clip segment. But you guys, you guys. Well, supposedly Joe was in the Mafia. People said that for years. Or he had ties to the Mafia.
What if he a goddamn football coach? He's from Brooklyn. Of course, you're gonna have know people. Ray Greekar. I mean, dude, we could get into this stuff, man. Ray Greekar, Sydney Song. Holy crap! Two of the most mysterious disappearances ever in the history of our country are both from Central PA. Sydney Song, no idea what happened there, but I'm into that type of stuff, like missing persons cases, the paranormal stuff. Like, I love that stuff. Like, I follow that stuff. Like Cindy Song, like the map of her going missing that night, I've driven it. Like, I've literally driven it to be like, what, I've literally, like, I'm into that type of stuff. Ray Greekar, who knows? But all right, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
See you guys, who knows when? Sometime soon, definitely. But yeah, we're gonna work on that recruiting stuff with Chris and Joe and Brett, and then we'll let you guys know. So you guys have a good night, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for commenting, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for the memberships, Joe, and have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.